Okay, Kim. So I'm super excited to chat with you today. And for a couple of reasons, because today's actually a super significant day.
Mm-hmm.
Today represents 6 years that you've, almost 6 years since you became a member and started working at Saffron Sage. So I'm really, really excited to tell your story and to have you tell your story because it's been such a
wild journey,
yes. Transformative journey. And through that, you and I have developed this really cool, interesting relationship. Yeah. But it's the dovetail of your holistic healthcare journey, but also your professional journey and your work life and your personal life and all these incredible twists and
changes. Yeah. A lot of changes occurred here for me, not only with my physical health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, my energetic health, and also my professional health as well, my career development, and like how I was able to step into so many different roles and have so many different opportunities to grow and evolve and surprise myself. And it's been a really beautiful journey. And just looking back, I have just profound gratitude and respect for all the different practitioners that work here, you as well, obviously, for giving me these different opportunities and expanding my skill set. And then also me just at the end of the day feeling better, coming to a new normal waking consciousness of feeling healthy and not feeling like my body is betraying me or that I'm stuck in this identity of being someone that is sick instead reframing that and learning how to be healthy and it evolving and having different life events happen to me these 6 years where I was, like stumbling a bit here and there and then readjusting, recalibrating, learning something new, and then trying my best to move forward in the most healthy way. Yeah. So,
okay, let's rewind 6 years ago because this time 6 years ago, first of all, talk about what was happening in your personal life, work. You have a sales background.
Yes.
Like, paint that picture because I don't think those of our members and our community here, they don't know you in that regard. Yeah. So, like, talk to me about where you were professionally then and what life looked like then.
Life then was drastically different. I was working in the tech world, in sales, pretty demanding environments where typically I was the only woman in the room, which, I would use to my advantage, obviously, but I was leaning a lot on my male side, and there was a lot of, just a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, a lot of big quotas to hit, a lot of big sexy companies that I got to work with, and a lot of long hours at home. Like I would, quote unquote, clock out for the day, but then I'd bring the work home with me, and I would work into the wee hours of the night to ensure that I was at the head of the pack of my sales team, and that was just what I did. I like to work, I work hard, and I like to win. And that was
And you were incredibly successful at it.
I was, yeah. And it was cool. It was really cool. It was a cool job and a career. And I learned a lot. But in doing that, I sacrificed my health because I didn't have a foundation of like how to take care of myself. It was strictly like, just go to the doctor a couple times every other year. It was pretty surface level things that we would dive into. And then I had a day of reckoning, is what I like to call it, was when I almost stroked out and I was admitted to the ER, and come to find out I had a stress-induced autoimmune disease. I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, and my life just got turned upside down. I lost a lot of weight. I was constantly in the bathroom. I couldn't hold anything in my body. I was, shaking like a leaf, like almost like resembling a chihuahua. Like it was just so skinny and so tiny. And I also was dealing with a lot of emotional angst as well at that time, thinking that my body betrayed me, thinking that, and I was angry. I was pretty angry at all of this because I wasn't able to live the life that I wanted to. And my endocrinologist had me ingest radioactive iodine. I ended up going into the basement of this hospital to ingest this stuff, which was pretty gnarly. Isolated myself for several weeks because I was radioactive. And then afterwards, after doing all of that and subjecting my body to that, the doctors had me on 13 medications every day I was taking. 13 reminders that I'm sick, you are not well. And it ate me up. And so I just was continuing to live my life in that way and not knowing that there were other options for me until I found Saffron and Sage, and I ended up doing a wellness consultation with you.
First time we met.
So that was like 6 years ago, almost to the day, where I walked in and I was like, wow, this place is really pretty. Like it's nice in here. It's airy. Lots of sunlight. I like the vibe. What else do you guys do over here? And so I know for my wellness consult, you had suggested several modalities that were outside of my scope of knowledge. Like I had no information or previous information about them, being energy therapy and spiritual direction and whatnot. But you did encourage me to do acupuncture, it was my very first time experiencing it. I had heard of acu, and I said, why not? I'll give it a shot. And I started coming in, and I became a member after my first session.
You came to one of our anniversary parties.
Yes, yeah, that was wild. That was a wild party. There were a lot of people in this building. Yeah, pre-COVID. I don't know. How many were there? 400 people?
Something, I don't know. I was worried about the fire marshal coming to shut us down.
That was wild. I was like, what is this place? So obviously other people are into it too. So then I ended up doing acupuncture and fire cupping for the first time in my life to help with, bringing some balance into my body energetically, as well as detoxing my body because of all the chemicals that I had ingested.
And supporting your endocrine system. That was a big part of recommendations, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And herbs too.
Yeah.
There were some herbs that I was prescribed by the different practitioners that I saw here at that time. And then I ended up going to my endocrinologist about 3 weeks later and did some blood work because I was in there all the time. They were always constantly monitoring me. It was just like the new normal. And my endocrinologist said to me, like, when the results came back in, was like, what in the hell have you been doing? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, all your levels, they're balancing out. They look completely different. And I told her, well, I'm going to this place called Saffron and Sage. I'm doing some acu, I'm doing some cupping, and they do some other things like a holistic clinic. And luckily I had a doctor who was encouraging of these types of modalities, because she's like, well, I've done everything I could do to help you, and now there's these other providers here at Saffron and Sage that clearly can impact you in a different kind of way. So she encouraged me to keep coming to Saffron. And at that point, that's when I became a member, because I saw the data points that suggested that there was literal changes in my body. And from then I realized that, sure, I can continue working in tech. I can continue working in these sales environments. But that was also a root of what had induced that disease, because I wasn't managing my stress in a way that was healthy. And so I decided at that point that I needed to change careers and do a hard pivot.
Talk about a hard pivot.
Yeah, I did a hard pivot, and I approached you and I said, hey, I want to work here. And you were like, I don't hire members. And I was like, well, come on, I'll literally do anything. I'll do anything. You want me to sweep the floors? I'll sweep the floors. You want me to send out emails? I'll send out emails. What else did I do? Just anything, literally anything that you want me to do, I will do it. I'll brew tea, I'll clean mugs, I'll do whatever you want me to do, because I knew that I could be a valuable asset to the team, but I just needed to earn your trust.
And no joke, I think this was not even 30 days after you became a member.
Yeah.
That you were working here.
Yep. And so I quit my job of, getting paid. I got paid really well. I had worked with sexy companies. I worked with a lot of smart people. And at that time, I was the main breadwinner in my home. My husband had just started working in tech, so he was working his way up. So, but I took a chance. I took a risk, and there's a book that you had recommended that I read, The Artist's Way. And the first chapter, there's a sentence there that she says, the author says, that stuck with me to this day, and it's called, what did she say? Leap and a net will appear. And so just have faith that, just have faith. And so I took the intern job, and as
you went from making six figures to being an intern and then making minimum wage.
Yeah, to making minimum wage. Yep. And so that was an adjustment for me, but I knew that was a calculated risk for just my outcomes. And
tell them about your first day, because I think this is the funniest story.
Oh shit! So yeah, I had, oh God, I don't even know where to start with that one. So it was your first day. You were bringing tea. You had just went and got tea from the back. You were bringing tea to our members that were showing up for their appointments. And you literally, and I know exactly who it was. It was one of our members and her husband who was coming in for the first time. Yep.
And you rounded the corner, and immediately you turn right around to me and you look at me and you go, "That's my old boss."
That's my old boss. What the hell? I was mortified because, I just quit, and
I remember asking you, I hope you left your job well.
No, I didn't. I abruptly quit, and it was it was just like, I'm gone, I'm leaving, this place sucks, and I gotta go. It wasn't that.
So I took him the tea.
Yeah, you took the tea out, and I was mortified, and I was like, what are the odds that this is happening right now? But of course, that's, LOL, that's just how things happen.
And that's why we do corporate wellness.
Yeah.
I don't want to change at the root.
Jeez.
But anyways, one thing that I want to highlight is, if you're comfortable sharing this, because your birthday's coming up, but you were in your mid to late 30s when you became a member,
yes.
right? And I think that's so important to underscore, because most of our members are like you. They're crushing it in their careers. They, are winning in the business world, and they're doing really well, and yet they are sacrificing their bodies and their mental health, and they are paying a high price to earn those incomes and achieve those results in their professional lives. And so that's not going to be everyone's decision, right? Is that I'm going to leave my high paying job, right? And I think for you, it was much deeper, because you had this severe stress-induced autoimmune disorder, right? And life was so debilitating.
Yeah.
And so I understand why you made that decision. And I just want to underscore that that's not necessarily feasible for everyone to make, but I just highlighting that for you is that it was really about, how do I reclaim my life and my well-being, and how do I live differently, right? And so walk us through, because you came in, began care, became a member, started a new job here.
Yeah.
But with that, from starting at 13 medications when you came in for your consultations, and then you did your blood work with your endo about 3-4 weeks later, and you were down to how many medications, what period of time? Because I think that's really important. You referenced the clinical outcomes, but already your medication management, your endo switched. Talk about that.
Yeah, so in conjunction with the practitioners, the doctors here, as well as my endocrinologists outside of this space, we work collaboratively to ensure that I could not only just feel better, but then the outcome for me was like, I don't want to be taking 13 pills a day. Like this is not how I want to live my life. And so that said, it was, I honestly, like, it probably was about 5 to 6 months by the time I got to a point where instead of 13 pills a day, I was taking 3.
Yeah.
And huge. And so thankful for that. And being able to supplement what I needed with herbal supplements too. And then being on and off of them depending on, like, what needs I'm encountering, because things have been changing and shifting with my health needs. But at that point in time, it took 5-6 months for me to be off of the 13 pills and be on the 3 instead, and have some freedom from not ingesting so many of these. I mean, they're chemicals. Yeah, more chemicals, because that was the solution, was just adding more chemicals.
Yeah. So fast forward, because it was about a year into your member journey that you were ready, as you mentioned. Some of the recommendations were made were energy therapy and spiritual direction, along with the acupuncture. You latched onto the acupuncture and the herbal therapies, and those were really instrumental for you. But it was around your year mark that you became ready to explore and kind of take things into another dimension with energy therapy. Talk about what shifted then.
Well, there were 2 shifts that happened, but the first one being that, since I think at that point I was kind of moving my way up in the company, and and I needed to know what I was doing. I needed to experience it and be authentic about it, because at that point, I think I was the experience director at that point.
Yeah, making recommendations. You're more client facing.
Yes, and so
this is 6 years ago. I've forgotten.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I need to authentically experience these different modalities that I didn't necessarily were gravitating towards my entire the past year and a half that I was here. Yep. And so I started to dive into these different modalities so that I could make authentic recommendations for clients and members. Yep. And because I think that people here, the approach is, it's not like a really hard sales like type of conversation. It's more so, for me anyways, when I was doing consultations, it was like, well, let me tell you about my story and how this place has helped me, and so that they can glean some insights as well as like some trust. Again, I had to earn people's trust that way, and I'm like, hey, I'm doing the work too. I'm not just here like talking about it. Like, I'm experiencing
selling
this.
You some snake oil.
I'm not selling snake oil. I am doing all the things, and I'm continuing to do all the things, and this is how it's helped me, and I strongly believe that it's going to help you in X, Y, and Z capacity depending on their unique needs. Yep. So that was my first push to try these different modalities, especially energy therapy, which I was really resistant towards, because I was one of these people that was like, well, I got to feel it to believe it. So, and that was just how my mindset was at the time. So I was just, acupuncture, cupping, and a good old fashioned deep tissue massage, that was my jam. And there was nothing wrong with that. Like, that was at the time, that's what I needed. And I just wasn't ready, and I'll be frank, I wasn't open yet to the other softer type of energetic modalities.
And I think that's okay, right? Yeah. And for a lot of us, when we have physical disease and illness manifest, to your point, a lot of this world is brand new. You haven't heard of these things. You have no idea. We don't grow up with these things. And it takes a time to kind of get acclimated and be open to that. And I think it also speaks to the treatment team that's been supporting you since day one, right? Because you have to have enough grace and compassion for the patient, for the member, to say, I think this is going to be really beneficial, but I recognize you're not ready yet. And that's even a dance to talk about not ready yet versus, to use your word, resistance, right? Because sometimes it's a mix of both, and it's up to your providers and your treatment team to help you press in and figure out what that is.
Yeah. And so that was my first experience with it, and I was open to it, and I was taken back by it, especially with a specific practitioner. And
why? Talk to the people who are in your place where you were 6 years ago. What occurred in energy therapy? If it's not too crazy.
It might be a little nutty, but I'll just say it because that's just, now I'm that kind of person. I was thinking, like, during the energy therapy session, my mind was doing a dance, and I was thinking about a girlfriend that did Reiki all the time, that I used to like poke fun at her, like, and I'd be like, what is this, you know? And I was thinking, and her and I had a falling out, and so I hadn't talked to her in a while, and she appeared in my mind while I was doing energy work with this practitioner, and I didn't say anything, obviously, because it was during the session, and I was like, man, if Christina could see me now, she would just be like giggling, because she's like, look at Kim, now she's doing it, now she gets it, now she understands. And then I had, you know, some like imagery that came through with me and her, like doing things. And then afterwards, during the outtake, the practitioner was like, hey, there was a woman that I saw that was blonde. You guys were walking on the beach. Does this make any sense to you? And I was like, what are you talking about? That is what I was thinking. That's my friend Christina. Like, that was, and which was such
Holy
a trip.
crap, this hocus pocus works.
Yeah. And there was something to it. And, and that was, you know, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Sure.
I wasn't expecting that at all. And then I did, once I was beginning to become open to it, I did feel a sensation of tingling and the warmth, and then just allowing my body to be open. And that's when I experienced it. And I felt peaceful.
So help me understand, or help me remember, when was it? Because you ended up going through our 2-year Reiki mastership program.
Yeah.
So from that time to you going through the training to become a practitioner.
Yeah, I'm a Reiki master.
You're a Reiki master.
I'm like the biggest skeptic that walked in this room and walked out. Now I'm a Reiki master who facilitates energy
Those are my
work.
favorite. Those are my favorites. Because you end up having the biggest transformation.
Yes.
At least you're open and you're honest with, I don't know about this, and I'm not ready for this, and here's why. So you can work with that.
Yeah, totally. And I, for me personally, I opted into the Saffron Sage Reiki training because I knew that it was thorough.
Yeah.
And I knew that because there are programs out there that it's like, be a Reiki master in like a weekend. It's like the craziest thing because there's so much that needs to get done. It's so sacred. And so anywho, so I like that we talked about the lineage and really maintaining the sacredness of it and the history of it, and not just blasting through such like powerful things
and integrating it.
And integrating, because you have to walk away and integrate. And but honestly, the reason why I started up was that, and you know, this was years ago, so I don't know if you remember this or not, or you probably do. But this was when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and lymphoma cancer. And it was right when the pandemic started, and which was a scary time for all of us. But I remember thinking, like, so helpless, thinking, how can I help my mother, and not having any power to help. And it was like, okay, Kim, you need to start training, because eventually you are going to do energy work with your mother, and she's going to need you, and you can serve her in this capacity. And this is how you take a little bit of the control back from the situation. And so that was my motivation, was my mother's cancer diagnosis. Yeah.
And I do remember that. And I remember even more vividly, fast forward, I don't remember how many months, but you actually traveled back to Texas, and your mom was in the hospital, and you actually did Reiki in the hospital. And if you're comfortable sharing that story, I think that's a very powerful, transformative story.
So I was able to go back to Houston. I got a call, it was getting serious, and so I needed to go back. And at that time during COVID, only one person was allowed into the hospital room, and my mom was going through CAR-T therapy, and which was at that point like going through clinicals, and like it was a blessing that she was able to do it, but it was really, really hard on her body, and we had an emergency where we brought her in, and it was a very special cancer unit in Houston. And so she's sitting there, they're laying in this bed, and the nurse station is near us. My mother is incoherent. She is sweating so much that it looks as though she jumped into a pool. Like it was just drenched in sweat. But she was shivering at the same time. Like she was clearly very, very sick from the medication and all of it. And I saw the nurses come through. They were hooking IVs up to her. And you know, with my experience working at Saffron, I was like, okay, well, what type of vitamins are in here? What minerals? What is in this? What are you giving my mother? Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, we're just giving her saline. Well, what the hell? Like that's all that we can do. This is all that we can do right now. And I was like, there's no other comfort that you can provide my mother at this time. Like, no, and basically we're just going to observe her and make sure that she doesn't die. That is what we're doing here. So
no real intervention.
No real intervention. It was just observing and just making sure that she doesn't die, or trying their best not to allow that to happen.
And part of that was part of your treatment plan by that time was IV therapy. And
yes,
you were getting
I was getting
vitamins
IVs.
and minerals.
Yes.
So that makes sense why that was top of your mind. So
yes.
Why are you only getting saline? Where's the rest of the stuff?
Why is it at this hospital you're giving my mother only saline, and when I'm at Saffron Sage I can get all the things? So, but anyway, that's a whole other discussion. And so at that point I said, okay, now this is the time for, like, Kim, you've been training at Saffron for your Reiki practitioner, like what's the word I'm trying to say? I wanted to be a Reiki master.
Yeah, you were on the pathway. You're doing level 1.
I think I was past 2 at that point. I wasn't 3 yet, so relatively a newer. But I was permitted to work on others.
Yeah, so you're like a year into this 2-year training.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started up, and I was in Texas, so I got a couple weird looks from the nurses as well as the head of the oncology department. They peeked in and they're like, what the heck is she doing? But I did the energy work with her, and then, no joke, it was about 20 minutes. It was 20 minutes of it, and by the end of the 20 minutes, my mother was talking. She wasn't sweating anymore. She wasn't shivering anymore, and she was asking for food. And she asked me, and my mother's a really religious person, and she was like, "What was that? What just happened?" And I told her, I said, "Hey, I called on your angels, Mom. I called on your angels. I called on Jesus. I called on God. I called on your mother, your father, everyone. I asked for help." And because she told me that she felt a lot of different hands on her body. It wasn't just me. So she was recognizing that there were other spirits there, or other benevolent beings.
Sure.
She'd always say angels, because that was the language that she was mostly comfortable with.
Sure.
And so the head of the oncology department, he approached me that same day, and he's like, "I don't know what you just did, but I heard from the other nurses what this is about. But all I know is that what you did helped what I was doing with your mom. So I'm going to ask you to extend your stay. Like, you need to stay longer in Houston, and you need to keep doing this while we're doing all our things." And so I extended my stay. I called you up. I was like, "Kristen, I need to stay. I need to be here longer. Sorry. You got to figure it out, the stuff at Saffron. I'm sure someone else can figure all the things out. And so I stayed in Houston, and I was able to help. And my mom would say, let's pray. That's what she would say. That's how she would ask me to do Reiki. Let's pray. And so we did it almost every day when I was there. By the time I left, she was, I have vivid memories of her like dancing in the kitchen and being outside with her roses and gardening, and just so much better. And even by the time I left, the nurses were like, can we do, I don't know about this Reiki thing you're doing, but can you do it for me? And it's but so they were open to it after they saw just the transformation. And then also my mother and I had such a strong energetic cord that I think that's what really amplified it too, because I'm her daughter. Yeah. So that was my, and then once I did that, I'm like, okay, keep going, do more Reiki. And then I finished mastership. And then that's when I became a practitioner. And I was holding on to 2 different roles here at the time. I'm not sure if I might've been the GM at that point. Maybe not. No, I wasn't. I was the experience director at that point. And so I was doing that, and as well as seeing clients here and there. Yeah.
So this time, you're straddling 2 different roles here. All of your thyroid function is under control. All these major symptoms have subsided. You're doing IV therapy. You're doing acupuncture. You're doing Reiki. And talk to us about when you started spiritual direction. When did that weave into part of your treatment plan and Judy become part of your treatment team?
Well, that was when my mom died. Yeah. So after my mom, and it was completely it was completely unrelated to the cancer. She was able to fight through it. She beat it. She was in remission. And then unfortunately, just a freak thing happened. It wasn't the cancer that took her down, but she ended up accidentally biting the inside of her mouth and developed thrush that spread to her lungs, and she was put on a ventilator and died. And so that was incredibly traumatic to experience. I was there when she transitioned over to the other side. And when I came back, I thought, because I had never been taught how to grieve.
None of us have.
Yeah.
Where do you learn that?
Yeah.
And I was... Your leave of absence was for what, 3 months?
3 months. I think at least it was 3 months.
Yeah, if not a little longer.
Yeah. And I grew up in a household where, if a pet died, my parents bought a new one by the end of the day. So it was like, heaven forbid I feel any type of sadness. I know they were trying to protect me and love me, but it didn't help as an adult. And so I was completely lost. Just the grief was palpable, but I didn't know how to manage it at all. It was a new feeling, especially losing my parent. It was my worst fear that I had been torturing myself about thinking about it. I would just think about it after my mom got diagnosed with cancer. But as soon as I came back to San Diego from Texas, I started doing grief work, and in conjunction with grief work, I was doing spiritual direction, and understanding a God of understanding a God of my understanding.
Yes.
So
God of my own understanding.
A God of my own understanding. And so, and I have, come up with a lot of religious programming growing up that was, in my opinion, not very beneficial, to the point where I turned left. I went completely left, and I didn't participate in anything spiritual.
Yeah. And your dad's from Texas, your mom's from Indonesia.
Yeah.
And conservative Christian?
Yeah, very conservative.
Background.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything. Yes, I won't even get into it, but it was very...
But that gives us a frame, right? Where a lot of people can relate to that. And so conservative Christian rejected all of this doesn't resonate with me. Fast forward, I've lost my mother. I'm steeped in grief. Now what?
I need help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, being able to walk with Judy and talk about spirituality and grief and my mother still being here, not on the physical plane, but in a different way, and accessing her. And it was really beautiful. It was necessary. And while I was grieving the death of my mother, to have those conversations and for her to encourage me to find a church that resonated with me. And she gave me different, she didn't give me, I was very curious, like, where do I go? Like, what do I do? It wasn't as if like you go here, here, and here. She's like, well, if you like this, then this. If you're more into this type of spirituality, then this. And so I ended up finding a church, and which is the last place I would have thought I would find myself in. Since I was in high school, I stopped going to church, and so at that time I was almost 40. And so, but yeah, the encouragement of that and being able to regain it, like in my own way, my understanding of what religion is and how it can serve me and how I can utilize it to become closer to my mother, even though she's no longer here. And so I see Judy monthly, even, years later. And we still talk about my mom, and it's a really healthy way to talk about my mother in a beautiful, profound way. And I think my mom's proud that I'm doing it, because my mom was really religious. And by the end of her life, she was opening up to, I just told you, she was energy work before. She's like, what the heck is this? Like, what is this? But then she was starting to become more flexible and open to different things. So I know that when we do spiritual direction, my mother's in the room.
And it was really about reclaiming your spiritual heritage, and not just reconnecting to, as you said, the God of your own understanding. But fast forward, you got to take this really magical pilgrimage home to where your mother was born, and even where you were born.
Yes.
So for your birthday.
Yeah, for my 40th, I went back to Indonesia. So
I bring that up because I think it's so incredibly significant to your journey, to your overall well-being, and the integrative work you've been doing through energy work and spiritual direction and grief work. Mm-hmm. So talk to me, because I think there was a big shift for you, a huge recalibration with that journey home. Talk about how that experience played into your grief work, played into your spiritual transformation.
Well, being able to, I went there for my 40th. I had been planning to go there, saving up money to go there once I turned 39. And then when my mother died, I realized the trip was going to shift a bit, because I was going to bring her ashes back home to Sumatra, where my family is. And so the first part of the experience, I was in Bali, which is a beautiful island that's very spiritual. And have you been?
No, I haven't been yet. It's on my list.
You would love it there.
I know, I gotta go.
And so being exposed to getting back into like where I'm from, and seeing other ways of life, other ways of worship, other ways of, they shut down the streets for, when I was there was a ceremony about not only the full moon ceremony, which literally they shut down everything for the moon in Bali, but then casting off all the negative demons from the world for the world. Yeah. This little island is like, no more of this.
Purge for everyone.
Purge for everyone in the world. So, and then having a day of quiet where we're not, no one's out, everyone's home. Like it's so
rest, renewal.
Yep. So seeing that when I was there was magical. And then when we went back to Sumatra, doing my mother's funeral service, where she ended up resting in between her mother and her father on our family plot of land that we have, and and experiencing that, and And then just being gifted, a Chris sword that was pretty much like a replica of what my great-grandfather's sword was like. And my cousin saw that I had a tattoo of it on my arm. And so they went on like a whole side quest to find this Chris sword for me, which was a female version of what my grandfather had. And it has a dragon on it, and I've always resonated. I'm kind of nerdy. I've always loved like dragons, and so to have that dragon energy in this sword, and it being me bringing it home and bringing it to work, it's my totem of protection. That's how I look at it, because I do a lot of energy work. It's very intimate, and it's my way of protecting myself and allowing a different type of spirituality practice to even just be embedded in the day-to-day of work. A lot of times you just put it off to Sundays, right? But no.
Yep. Weaving in the sacred into every day.
It was weaving the sacred into every day. And now it's, I have it next to my bed. I have a couple other swords. I have a couple other swords in my house too. I don't use them. It's only for spiritual purposes and reclaiming it, and as well as connecting to my Indonesianness and whatnot. Yeah.
I think that's so valuable, and I think it's so important to talk about spirituality because, as you referenced, before you had this health crisis, like every couple of years you go to the doctor and, shallow conversations, very superficial. And in this context, in a holistic healthcare context, we're talking about spirituality. We're talking about loss. We're talking about our beliefs about what happens after we die, right? And how that plays a critical role in our well-being, and also integrating pieces of ourselves that when we live fragmented, right, disease sets in. And so much of the visual that I'm getting as we're talking about this last 6 years of your journey is integration, completion, this kind of fusion of the pieces of your childhood and your heritage, and getting back to yourself and discovering a core aspect of yourself that you didn't even know before.
Yeah. Yep. Truly.
So talk to me about how you would describe your well-being now. Where are you now?
Well, now I just feel confident. That's the word. I feel confidence in my decision making around my health. I feel like I have a lot of different perspectives that I've learned the past 6 years, where it's not just one way or the highway. It's a multitude of different solutions that can work everyone can work together. My mental health, obviously, like I see Judy for spiritual direction as well. There's things that do come up, like I am human. There's always things that I get to work on. During my acupuncture sessions, Dr. Scott, because he has me on herbs for my liver, and everyone knows here that the liver is associated with anger, and what's associated with anger is underlying that is grief. And so I know it's a continual process for me, but having the support here and being able to press into what a lot of people would think is uncomfortable has actually allowed me to move through it in a quicker way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Well, I think you've made a lot of progress, and I think you are definitely one of our shining examples as a member of what it means to press into your grief. And in fact, you, even after you returned from in Texas, your leave of absence continued, because then you fully were focused on your grief work and your spiritual direction before you even came back to see patients again.
Yeah. I was like, I can't see anyone unless you have to work on if you're going to be holding space and doing that type of work with people, you have to be working on yourself too.
Yep.
And coming in with a clean slate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll always be a member here, continually working on myself. Not because it's a chore, but because it's a choice.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, anything you would say to anyone listening that finds themselves in the place that you found yourself 6 years ago? What advice would you give to that person?
Gosh. ask for help. That's something that I used to have such a hard time. Just ask for help and trust your intuition and trust the team here and press into it. And you're gonna get better. You're gonna get better. Things always work out. They'll always work out for you. And yeah,
I love it.
yeah, just a place of love. Just don't beat yourself up about things.
Yeah.
You're gonna be all right.
Yep. I love it. Well, it's just been such a incredible journey. It's been an honor to journey with you all these years, and I'm excited to see where you're at 6 years from now. And I know you have lots of exciting things happening in your personal life. I know you have plans to do more travel, which I'm excited about. But I think you are just, I tell your story a lot because I think success isn't overnight. And when we have these major autoimmune disorders or chronic conditions that surface and overrun our life, having the ability to create a container so you can press into that and explore that and to know that it's gonna take time, and exactly what you said, be gentle with yourself. You know, a lot of these things for you unfolded really quickly, right? You were really dedicated to your care and you did a lot of your work, and I think that's something that it's not just coming in here. You were very mindful of everything that your treatment team told you to be doing at home, including, you know, you went into this whole training program that really altered and shifted things for you. But it is just, I love doing this. I loved hearing that, even though I've been along the journey the whole time. It's just so beautiful to look back and see what's unfolded in the last 6 years.
A lot has. There's been a lot of movement. Good stuff. All good stuff.
Very good stuff.
Thank you for taking the time to learn more about my story, or revisit my story.
Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being so vulnerable and honest. I appreciate it.